Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. Today is Friday, November 2nd, 2012. I'm Darko. Alright, I'm going to continue here. We just left off with Iraq and now Iran. If Iran gets nuclear weapons, so will Turkey, says Israeli Defense Minister. The editor's note from StratRisk is Pakistan is working with Saudi Arabia and will work with Turkey to help them to develop nuclear arms in this age of strife. Pakistan and Turkey's diplomatic relations go back to the Ottoman Empire, and that there is no Arab nation that wants to be under the heel of Western powers any longer. The Sykes-Picot agreement that allowed the British and French to rule the Arab world is still in play for now. This is a look at the military actions of France in North Africa, Libya, and what they're going to be starting here soon, Mali. They aren't willing to give up their hegemonic influence. Careful moves are constantly made to keep the Arabs in check. It says, especially with divide and conquer, that's the thing, to get all the Muslims fighting each other. So it is a must that those nations seek power by any means to unshackle themselves from their colonial masters. Nuclear power is the ultimate trump card, and I've said that before too about Pakistan. If Iran starts to build nuclear weapons, Turkey would soon follow, said the Israeli defense minister. He says Saudi Arabia will turn nuclear within weeks, and Turkey will turn nuclear in several years. I don't know about Saudi Arabia though. I don't know what their program is like, but I know it would take a while to at least get to that point. So I don't know how much truth there is to that. But he also said Egypt would follow as well, causing a nightmare as nuclear materials end up in the hands of terrorist groups, which of course were kind of allowed to happen under the Arab Spring, right? The Western engineered crisis. That's why when I hear on like local radio stations, especially on the Christian ones, you know, now I know why a lot of them in the churches and stuff like that are all on the neocon agenda, because, you know, they read the Bible and stuff and they think that, you know, that the Muslims are representative of Satan and Muhammad is, you know, basically the devil, and they're going to come and just kill them and they're going to have world domination. You know, I don't, maybe if the Bible does say that, I don't know, but I don't exactly go along with everything as far as that goes, and I just think that they're being used. Just like the Muslims are being used, like the rebels in Syria by the West, Christians are being used by neocons and Zionists. And what really gets me is that why don't they just look at how this all happened? Almost everything that happens is a result of what the West has done. So all the fury and stuff like that wasn't so much about the insulting of film about Prophet Muhammad. It was about what they're doing in their country, and that was just their precipice, right? That's just what tipped them over the edge at that particular moment. Turkey, and just lastly, there's a very good chance that most of the modern religions were created by the same entities, by the same groups for control and domination, and divide and conquer. Turkey to request Patriot deployment from NATO. Patriot missiles were deployed twice in the past in Turkey, both in the context of the Iraq War in the early 90s and 2000s. Turkey plans to officially request NATO to deploy a Patriot missile defense system in its territories as a security precaution against a potential large-scale military offensive from Syria, as Syrian shelling on the border raises tensions. So, then we have prime ministers saying they're on standby to send warplanes to Gulf as Iranian tensions rise. Cameron of the UK weighs the use of jets amid fears move could inflame situation. Britain is considering stationing warplanes in the Persian Gulf as the confrontation with Iran. Well, I'm not even going to continue with that, right? Because this is coming through straight from Western propaganda, from intelligence probably written. It's not so much a standoff. It's they're starving their people. The West is starving their people, and they're really screwing with them because they want them under their hand. We just covered that. They want them under their hand. And if you're like Pakistan, you've got power. They want power. They want to be sovereign, and the West doesn't want that. So. But yeah, so they're considering deploying these jets and stuff like that. They say at a time, mind you, right around the elections, when Israel is threatening military strikes against Tehran, and of course all the turbulence in the Middle East, which has been engineered by the same countries. The U.S. is monitoring Iranian warships Sudan visit from the 31st of October. It goes on here and says that it was monitoring the visit of the 2 Iranian warships to the Sudanese port this week. The warships left Port Sudan in the Red Sea earlier, and the AFP photographer said after the visit that coincided with the Sudan's denial that Iran is making weapons in Sudan. It says here, Sudan's links to Iran have come under scrutiny after Israel basically bombed their factories. So, AFRICOM's preparing for another humanitarian military intervention. So, Washington corporate interests are hidden behind humanitarian interventions, and that is the story of the U.S. involvement in Libya, Uganda, Sudan, and other parts of Africa. They've been claiming that Somalia was a big success because Washington's spooks spent $500 million backing an African proxy force. They're talking about the Kenyan forces, Ethiopian forces, Somali forces, and government CIA-type trained contractors, private mercenaries, that allegedly drove out al-Qaeda in that country. And it is no coincidence that massive untapped oil reserves in the Puntland region in northeastern Somalia were recently announced in 2012. That's right. A Canadian company along with the UK have gone in there and they've actually started to try to drill in the name of humanitarian intervention, not business. Aid for displaced Somalis has been stolen. The gatekeepers are siphoning off food aid intended for internally displaced people living in the squalid camps in the capital, Mogadishu. It says the gatekeepers linked to powerful militias, landowners, and politicians control the camps through intimidation and force. It's kind of like how every other government works, right? Even denying the displaced access to their homes if their rent is in the arrears. So what is happening in these camps has been described as a system of quasi-slavery. But these internally displaced persons complain of severe physical abuse. Now remember this part right here when we get to the next article. The city is enjoying an economic boom with improved security under African Union peacekeepers. Those are people that kill people. It says here, though, that most of these displaced people have not returned home, which is probably part of the initial plan, usually because they lack the money to restart their lives, and food and security conditions have not really improved in their places of origin. And there's a kind of a credo or philosophy of do no harm, kind of like do the patient no harm, don't make it worse. And it goes on and says the Islamist militants of al-Shabaab who controlled Mogadishu until August 2011, since 91, when the civil war began, says they have accused aid agencies of politicizing humanitarian needs and creating dependency. They have banned most major organizations such as the World Food Program and UN Refugee Agency from operating in their territory. Get this, Refugees International report says that the best way to stop the siphoning of this aid is to end the aid altogether. Then we have Somali traders want UN to lift charcoal trade ban. The loss of the charcoal trade will cut a major source of revenue and thus have a detrimental effect on the operational capacity to carry out large attacks, talking about al-Shabaab. But the flip side to the charcoal problem is that residents who made their living from the trade no longer are making money. A potentially tricky issue for the Kenyan troops who now control the region. And they're talking about winning the hearts and minds at the point of a gun, right? That's what peacekeepers do. AU presses for more weapons for Somali governments. Calls for UN Security Council to legalize arms imports. The AU is pressing the UN Security Council to remove a long-standing arms embargo on Somalia as a way to import massive amounts of additional weapons for the self-proclaimed Somali government's military. U.S. mission in Benghazi was CIA operation. As if we didn't already know this, we had to be told by the Wall Street Journal. The U.S. mission in Libya's eastern city of Benghazi that came under attack in September was mainly a secret CIA operation. I've covered this before about how there was actually mostly CIA there. And it says here that of all those people that were evacuated, these 30, quote, officials, only 7 worked for the State Department. This is interesting. CIA Director Patriot did not attend a ceremony held for the arrival of the coffins of the victims in the U.S. allegedly to hide the CIA operation. Albright wraps disgusting Serbs in Prague book signing. The Clinton-era secretary, confronted by pro-Serbian protesters who called her a war criminal during a recent book signing in her native Prague, pushed them aside as disgusting Serbs in a confrontation going viral on the internet. You can go in there and check that video. It's 1 minute and 35 seconds. As they close in on her, she says, get out, that's it, get out. So they soon walked away with an aide after saying they're disgusting Serbs. So, as Clinton's top diplomat, Albright headed the U.S. participation in the Yugoslav wars in Bosnia and Kosovo, and is credited for pushing NATO into the humanitarian crisis, which was dubbed Madeline's War by the Times magazine. Then the other Clinton, Hillary Clinton, urges Serbia to accept Kosovo's borders, said on Wednesday Serbs must accept that they cannot change Kosovo's borders as the U.S. and EU press Serbia and Kosovo to normalize relations. I love a foreign nation telling, as they're trying to overthrow sovereign nations in other parts of the world, the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations member, is saying the boundaries of an independent sovereign Kosovo are clear and set. What a joke. Then U.S., EU to ethnic Serbs, you have a home in Kosovo. The U.S. is actually hoping that Kosovo will become a member of NATO and hopes stability across the region will end a process of Balkanization that began with the breakup of Yugoslavia 2 decades ago, in which minority groups in Bosnia and Kosovo threatened to continue. One stumbling block is the fate of 60,000 Serbs in northern Kosovo who reject their national government's authority and instead seek independence or incorporation into an expanded Serbia. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, right? So that's the way they go. You can't set up a puppet state without killing some sovereignty. China security crackdown includes pigeons, toy planes. No dissent is tolerated ahead of the meeting of the Congress, so those planning to let their pigeons stretch their wings over Beijing tomorrow will have to reschedule. So, as part of limiting potential protests, the government has made some interesting rules. Pigeon owners must keep their birds on the ground. So, taxi windows can't be rolled down, and if you want to buy anything from ping pong balls to balloons to toy planes, you'll need at least an ID and maybe an explicit permission from the police. China is getting ready to make a once-in-a-decade shift in leadership. And also with pigeons, Israel bashes provocation of carrier pigeons on Gaza flotilla. Activist confirms the Estelle had pigeons on board. So it says a shipload of medicine riled up the Israeli government enough. The discovery that the activists on board of the Estelle included carrier pigeons, which were prepared to deliver photographic evidence of Israeli attacks on the passengers, has them downright livid. So it's not clear on the reports whether all the pigeons were captured by the military or if some of them may have gotten away with images of taser use on board, as was hinted at by some of the activists on the ship. Next up, China's communist elite readies for power transfer, and they're talking about closed-door meetings, so just like the U.S., very democratic, right? They'll block you off and stuff like that on the conventions. Talking about a choreographed but still fraught transfer of power to a younger generation of leaders. Choreographed, like ours is too. The ultimate goal, of course, is to effect regime change not only in Myanmar, but to create a unified Southeast Asia front against China in pursuit of long documented plans to encircle and contain the emerging superpower. This is an interesting little part here from Land Destroyer. As reported in June 2011's collapsing China, as far back as 1997, there was talk about developing an effective containment strategy coupled with the baited hook of luring China into its place amongst the international order. The notorious neocon policymaker Robert Kagan described the necessity of using America's Asian allies as part of this containment strategy. Clinton goes through a list of regional relationships the U.S. is trying to cultivate to maintain American leadership in Asia. So we're talking about Myanmar, Malaysia, Philippines, that type stuff. South Korea. Myanmar Parliament approves foreign investment bill. There was a tussle involving a government eager to attract foreign investment, tycoons determined to protect their monopolies, and small businesses keen not to be shut out. So who do you think is going to win? A clause requiring foreign investors to provide at least 35% of startup capital in a joint venture with local partners has been dropped. Another provision stipulated that foreigners could only own 50% of joint venture. Said now it's been decided not to mention this ratio since it can sting foreign investors. Remember how I was talking about this puppet government of Suu Kyi, whatever, in Myanmar, was to bring down this project, this dam that was going to help them really help their people and their country become more sovereign. Well, there's this in Singapore. First vertical farm opens in the country. Commercial-scale vertical farms open in the tiny, densely populated city of Singapore with the aim of decreasing dependence on food imports. They consist of 120 aluminum towers 9 meters in height. And get this, Tokyo complains to Washington over U.S. soldier assault on boy. This is just after the U.S. soldier was found dead in Japan by a train station. And America, despite a nighttime curfew imposed by the military after what? After U.S. troopers allegedly raped a Japanese woman. After attacking this teenager, the serviceman then jumped out of the third floor's window and was taken to the hospital. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.